Now invite Sharon Parker to make some comments about what she found with the tool.
Thank you very much, Roger. On behalf of the research team, I'd first of all like to thank the government for investing in this research, the members of the reference group who supported us in the research, and of course the more than 4,000 participants, FIFO workers, even past FIFO workers and FIFO partners who participated in the study. What the research involved, first of all, was a review of more than 59 existing studies on this topic. We then surveyed more than 3,000 FIFO workers, more than 400 FIFO partners, and more than 300 former FIFO workers. We also conducted in-depth interviews with 40 FIFO workers and their partners, and we did a unique study where we tracked over time the experiences of 200 FIFO workers as they moved across their roster. So we tracked them 5 times across that shift. Roster. So what did we find from the research? There are 3 very clear conclusions that I invite you to take away. The first is that FIFO workers are clearly at risk for mental ill health. Comparing with a specifically designed benchmark group, which is similar to FIFO workers on demographics and so on, except they don't do FIFO work, and also compared to Australian norms, we find on most measures that FIFO workers experience greater psychological distress, have poorer well-being, have more suicidal thoughts, have poorer sleep quality, engage in riskier drinking, and engage in other drug use behaviours to a greater extent than those comparison groups. Some of those differences can be attributed to the demographic profile of FIFO workers. In other words, FIFO workers tend to be young to middle-aged men with lower education backgrounds and doing sort of more blue-collar work, and these are risk factors for psychological distress. But what our research very clearly shows, that even taking account of those demographic risks, there are greater stresses and strains and distress for the FIFO population. So the first clear conclusion from this research is that they are a group at risk. The second clear conclusion is that there are many factors that shape the mental health and well-being of FIFO workers. So whilst 1/3 of FIFO workers experience high or very high levels of psychological distress, and this is a high number, as Roger mentioned, comparison groups norms, Australian norms are 10%. But there are 1/3 of FIFO workers that don't experience high distress, and we can use that knowledge to ask the question, well, what factors shape the mental health and well-being of FIFO workers? And some of those factors are about the FIFO workers themselves, how they cope with the challenges, for example. Some of those factors are about the family and the dynamics of the relationships. But perhaps most importantly, some of those factors are about the aspects of the site, the team and the organisation. And I highlight these factors in particular because these factors can be changed. So for example, things that contribute to greater mental health risk for FIFO workers are long rosters, working nights, having unsupportive supervisors, being exposed to bullying and even witnessing bullying, and other such factors, many factors that we identified. So this leads me to the third conclusion of the research, and that is that much can be done. So we identified in the research 18 actions. Some of those actions are about first addressing the fact that 1/3 of this population suffers from psychological distress. So how can we reduce the stigma of that, and how can we support those individuals? Some of those recommendations go further and say we need to not only deal with the distress that exists, but prevent it emerging in the first place. And that brings us to some of those factors that I've already mentioned around leadership, culture, rosters, accommodation, and so on. And the third set of recommendations are saying, well, let's not just try to prevent ill health, let's see what we can do to actually promote better well-being amongst this group. And as for example, a nice finding from the study was that if people had engaged in social activities on site, something as simple as a barbecue, then they were less likely to suffer from mental distress. So I urge that we act upon these recommendations. In part, it's about complying with occupational health and safety laws. In part, it's about good business. So we know from other research that investing in mental health interventions has a 5-fold benefit in the resources sector. But most importantly, it's actually about investing in our community. FIFO workers are our brothers, our daughters, our sons, our friends, and we want to make sure that they are okay and that they come home safe from harm.